First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for organizing this great event. It's great to be here in Kiev. And today, I'm going to be talking about Crystal and Kemal. So this talk is going to be like in two parts. At first part, I'm going to talk about Crystal and then Kemal. Let me introduce myself. My name is Serdar Dogruyol. I am the CTO at Twentify, a Turkish startup. I'm a Rubyist. I've been doing Ruby for like 7 years. I'm a Crystal evangelist for more than 2 years now. I've been organizing Ruby Turkey and Crystal Turkey for the recent years. I'm an open source developer. I put all my code on GitHub and other services. I'm a polyglot person. If you can read that, it's in Japanese, and it says that I love Ruby. And this is my company, Twentify. We develop a mobile application which lets our users earn money, and by doing that, we provide mobile intelligence to enterprise customers and SMEs. So let's talk about Crystal. How many of you in this room have heard about Crystal before? Whoa, that's amazing. We are making progress then. So the thing is that Crystal is like, it has a very, very unique motto. It's fast as C and slick as Ruby. It sounds kind of funny putting those words together, but Crystal is actually doing that. And be sure to check the new website. It has a new design and it's awesome. So I have a confession to make. I really, really love Ruby, like we all do here. And the thing is that wherever we go, which language we use, we always long for Ruby. And we always miss Ruby. Oh, the lights go on. So that's why I looked for a language which resembled Ruby. And then in the end, I found Crystal 2 years ago. And by the way, Ruby is awesome. So last year at RubyConf, Matt said that Crystal is a deliverance. So it's the Ruby 4.0 we are waiting for. And Matt is actually supporting Crystal. He's been donating some money on Bounty Source fundraiser. And the thing is that, as you can see, this is the first Crystal code that I wrote to try it out. And as you can see, this is both valid Ruby code. It's just a dummy Fibonacci implementation. And when you run this with Crystal, it just works. And even the extension was RB, and it just worked out. So that was like the best thing for me. But the thing is that Crystal is typed, statically typed. Unlike Ruby, you can specify types. Most of the time, you don't have to. But the thing is that I actually come to like types after playing with Crystal. So how many of you get this error on a daily basis while developing with Ruby? Yeah. The thing is that calling something on nil is really common, and because Ruby is interpreted and has runtime, you just get crash like this, and it's really annoying. I really hate it. But the thing is that with Crystal, you get types like this. You can do type restriction on an argument like this, and you can see that we restrict the n to be in 32. And when you try to call that method with something else, it just doesn't compile. And you can see the error that no overload matches with type string. And you can see that it just accepts int32. So that's a great thing. And you get this at compile time, which means extra safety and less bugs. Talking of overloading, this Crystal has method overloading, and the thing is that you can define a method with different arguments and type restrictions. And Crystal compiler will find the appropriate method for you with given types. For example, in this code, you can see that when you call it with an integer, it just calls the integer man with method signature. And when you call it with string, it just calls the one with string restriction. So that's a great thing. And it really simplifies your code. In Ruby, most of the time, you have to deal with those ugly switch cases. And you need to check if the type is something or something else. In Crystal, you just use method overloading, and it's just great. And there is this great thing that I really like about Crystal is union types. It really opened my mind and made me love types. The thing is that a union type is something that a variable can be a type of multiple types. Like, this can be either an expression or a type itself. When you take a look at this code, you can see that it can either return an int32 or an integer. So when you take a look at the type of this variable, it's int32 pipe string. So this means that this can be either int32 or string. And you can make union types with hashes, with whatever you want. And when you check the runtime tab with class, it's just int32, the type of the returning expression. And the thing is that unlike some other languages that we are really using right now, Crystal has generics built in. So you can just specify a generic type like this. Most of the time we use T. If you have been doing Java or something, you are pretty familiar with this. And generics just parameterize the type with other types. For example, you can give int32 for this instance, and it can just make this restriction to int32, or you can just use string on the other instance. And generics are really powerful. In Crystal STD, all the core classes, array, enumerable, are implemented with generics. And the thing is that Crystal is a compiled language. It compiles down to native code, thanks to LLVM. For example, to run that code that I showed before, you can just use Crystal and the file name. This compiles the program first and then runs it, which takes a lot of time, as you can see. And if you want compiling before, you can just do Crystal build, but if you are releasing for production, you can turn on the release flag, which opens up all the LLVM optimizations, and then compile it down to this native code. And then you can just run it like this, and it's much more faster and efficient, as you can see from here. And the thing is that, as you may already know, native code is much more easier to deploy. You just throw one binary to your server, and that's it. And the thing is that macros are the way to do metaprogramming in Crystal. You don't have a runtime, so you can't do something like send or eval using Crystal. Instead, you can use macros like this. For example, this simple define method macro. And as you can see, it just takes the name and content of the method. And when you call it like this, it just copy and paste that code into into the generated binary. By the way, you use these spatial annotations, curly braces, for macros. And the thing is that those are ASTs, not some string. You can do advanced stuff with that, but that's not for here. And the thing I really like about Crystal is that concurrency, unlike Ruby, it's built into Crystal. And the thing is that it's based around CSP, which you are familiar from Go. So this is a concurrent file opener and total line counter in Crystal. As you can see, this is pretty familiar to Go. You open a channel to communicate between different fibers. And then here we use the keyword spawn. Spawn does this, spawns a fiber and does the task in the background. And then we use the channel to send the result back to continue execution. So it's just simple like this to spawn a fiber. And the thing is that it's really cheap. For example, you can spawn like billions of fibers in a 64-bit OS. And I think this is really great. And the thing is that fibers uses an event loop, so it's really fast. And the thing is that there are some those little stuff that really make Crystal more awesome. For example, Crystal Play. It's an interactive web UI like this. You just type Crystal Play on your terminal, and there is this web UI coming up. And you can do interactive stuff with this. It just evaluates your code on the fly without waiting. So this is like a REPL, but not a fully compatible REPL because Crystal is compiled. And there is this thing. In previous talks, we have talked about code convention and code styling. And the good thing is that Crystal has this Crystal tool format command, which formats your code based on Crystal conventions. For example, Crystal Sublime Text plugin does this automatically when you save your code. So convention by default, which is pretty great. And the thing is that we have double quotes everywhere. And the thing is that I stopped using single quotes in Ruby after writing Crystal for a while, because it just doesn't make sense to pay that attention to single or double quotes. And the thing is that Crystal got grammar correct. For example, it has this S. So, for example, sometimes I was doing Crystal and I use includes, and when I go back to Ruby and try to use include, I can't use it because I always do this. Was it include or includes? And this really, it's funny. And I really think that Ruby should fix that. And a good thing, there is no global variables. It's just removed from the language like 1 year ago or something. And in Crystal, we have shards, which is like Ruby gems. But it's not centralized, it's a decentralized system. We use crystal shards.xys to discover new shards. As you can see from here, we have like nearly 2K shards and counting up. You can see the trending or most popular projects from here. And it has a nice search built into it. So be sure to check this out and search for a project before building yourself. I know benchmarks are lies and stuff, but the thing is that I like it, and Crystal is pretty good at benchmarks, so I'm just gonna show some quick benchmarks. For example, this is from this repo, Crystal Benchmarks game. You can check that out. And as you can see, Crystal is not as fast as C, but pretty close. And it's really low on resources. That's a great thing. For example, also this benchmark here, Crystal is on top. There is no C, but when you compare that with Ruby, it's just, really, really good. By the way, just take all those benchmarks with a grain of salt, as always. And the thing is that Crystal is a community effort. It's been mainly supported by a company called Manas from Argentina. The core developers work there. But the thing is that Crystal is a community effort, and it's waiting for your support in this Bounty Source fundraiser. And I hope you support it someday. The next part of my talk is actually about the framework that I built. It's called Kemal. Does anyone know what that thing is? What? Hat? Fez. Yeah, correct. It's a fez. It's a traditional Turkish hat, actually. And you can follow it with this handle, or you can check the website for documentation. And the thing is that Kemal is actually not so unfamiliar to you when you take a look at this. By the way, it's pronounced as Kemal, not Camel or Kamil or something like that. And how many of you are web developers here? Cool, like 90% or something. By the way, watch this. How many of you know this video of Steve Ballmer going crazy and shouting at like web developers? It's really funny. And Kemal is a web framework, like I mentioned. It's like, with these giants, but still growing. So the thing is that when people ask me about Kemal and what's unique about that, I just say these three words. It's fast by default. It's effective. That means that it doesn't have all that stuff built in, like Rails or Phoenix. It's just minimal. It's just, modular for you to use. And it's simple. There is no complex stuff in it, and it's really, really easy to get started. Just take a look at this. And I'm pretty sure that like 90% of you are familiar with this DSL, right? So it's just, you require Kemal, which is like you would do in Ruby. And you just define your route like this with get and your path and the block which says what the action is going to do. And then you just say kemal.run, and that's it. You have a fully functional HTTP server working in your computer. And the thing is that it's compiled and pretty efficient. By a simple Kemal app like this consumes less than a megabyte, so it's really great. So I'm going to go over the features pretty quickly. So the thing is that this is also familiar to you. The DSL is similar, like this. However, there are some unique differences due to Crystal, because Crystal is a typed language, and you have a compile time, and that's why it's hard to guess the types beforehand. For example, when you are accessing a post body, Kemal yields the HTTP context, which holds the request and response, and actually it's a stream, so you can access the parameters like this, context.params.url or body or age or whatever. The thing is that since body can contain anything like string or int or, I don't know, JSON, you have to specify the type like this. For example, you can say that name is a string. So you let the compiler know that this is a string, or this is an int32. For example, you don't have to do that because the type is here is just string, and the compiler can just do type inference here. And that's it. Here is an example post request from curl and the response. For JSON, it's pretty much the same, but JSON can be recursive and it can contain quite complex types. It's just the same actually. And for example, when you post this JSON like this, you can parse it like in the above code. And the thing is that Kemal has a static file server built into it. It has etext port, caching, multi-part ranges for resuming file uploads and stuff like that. And the thing is that it's pretty fast, and most of the time you actually don't need Nginx or some other server to make it fast. It's really, really fast. I mean, serving JS or CSS, even bundle JS, like 10 megabytes, takes less than 100 milliseconds or something. And the thing is that you can change the path like this. By default, it's under public. And there is this thing. Right now, Crystal doesn't have that much templating languages. There is only ECR, which is actually ERB, but for Crystal. And this is compiled, not at runtime. So it's super efficient, by the way. And there is this one called Slank. It's actually pretty much the same with Slim. So Kemal has a generic Vue templating engine. It actually uses something called Kilt. And you can just swap out to templates like this. And the great thing is that, unlike Ruby, thanks to Crystal, Kemal has WebSockets baked into it. So you don't have to have something else like, I don't know, event machine or something. Or you don't have to use Puma or something like that. You can just use Kemal, and it's super simple, by the way. Here is the DSL, and here is the full code to spawn, to create a simple chat server. You just declare your WebSocket root like this, and it uses socket for you. And then you can just access that socket, and the socket emits events like on message or on close or on start. And this is pretty much simple. And then actually this is a working chat example. And actually there is an example I built with React and Kemal, which you can access at this URL. I hope that it's working. It's probably working, but. And there is this unique difference between Kemal and all those big frameworks. The thing is that most of the time when you are building a complex application with Rails, you can see like tens of before actions in a controller or in a model, and it's quite complicated to refactor or modify them. That's why instead of using those, we use middlewares. Middlewares are actually the building block of Kemal, and Kemal itself is also a middleware. I mean, the root handler is also a middleware. And the thing is that a HTTP handler is a really simple class, actually. You just include the HTTP handler module, and the thing is that you can intercept the request and modify, do whatever you want there in between your request response lifecycle. And this is actually what a handler, a middleware is. Just a plain class, and you just include the HTTP handler like this, and then you call this is the HTTP action being called, and it gets context like this. For example, you can process this request context here. You can either, I don't know, do authorization, get some records from the DB, or throttle the request. And then when your job is finished with that middleware, you just call the next like this. And then the execution goes to the next handler. So it's like Lego blocks. You just put handlers on top of each other, and it separates all your concerns into different middlewares, which is pretty suitable for domain-driven design. And this is actually the graph. So the request comes in like this, and you have the handler here. And the thing is that you do your work in this context, and you modify stuff like parameters and so. And the thing is that you can access path headers, parameters, or body, whatever you can think of from an HTTP request, and that's it. And like I said, everything is a handler. So the cool thing about is that you can replace anything from Kemal itself. So if you don't like logging, the default logger, just change it and put your own logger. Or if you don't like exception handling, just change it and put your own handler. And I think that's a really great way. And it's much more close to the metal instead of using all those high-level frameworks. So this is actually what's happening when you process a request with Kemal. So there is this 5 default handlers here. When a request comes in, at first, it goes through this init handler, which sets the headers and all that required stuff, and initialize everything. And then it goes through a log handler. Like I said, this is optional, and you can replace it, but Kemal has default logging. And then it goes through static file handler. This is also optional. You can turn it off, or you can change it with your own handler, like I said. And it goes through exception handlers to catch all those runtime exceptions when you are processing your route. And there is this custom handlers and filters coming later. So it's placed in between root handler and the others. By the way, Kemal also have before and after filters, but like I said, I don't like to use them much, but they are pretty convenient for setting small stuff like HTTP headers and so. And last but not the least, it goes to root handler and executes your code in the block. By the way, all the stuff here are actually streams, so you can modify the response even after sending it. So you can do stuff like streaming, and that's good. And this is actually a production app that I built. So the thing is that I do use this notation of declaring the routes in a single file. And then there is this main file which just requires the required routes. And I namespace like this, as you would do in Rails. And there is this different folder called middlewares. So I put the required middlewares in the related folder. So for example, API version 1 middlewares go to API version 1 folder, and it just does the related stuff there. It has session support, but the thing is that it's not included in Kemal itself. It's a different shard, like I said. If you want, you can just include it and configure your session store like this. We have like a file store, a Redis store, and a memory store by default. Yeah. These are the engines. And the thing is that the engine implementation is an abstract handler. So you can write your engine pretty quickly. For example, someone, please write a memcache handler engine maybe. And the thing is that it's pretty simple to use. But there is a unique situation, like I said, it's typed, so sometimes you have to specify types, or you have to do some type casting here. And here we go set the session like this and then get like this. Pretty simple. Testing, like I said, this is also a different shard that you can use, not built into Kemal itself. For example, consider that you have this root here. And in your spec, by the way, this is, how many of you use RSpec here? Cool. So you all know this DSL here. Crystal has a testing library called spec, and it's built in the STD itself, and it's pretty similar to RSpec, so pretty easy to read. You describe your application, and you describe your root like this, and then you just call it like you do in RSpec, and then you just check that if the response body is equal to hello world, or if the response code is what you expected, right at home. And the thing is that it's unopinionated, so I don't want anyone to follow there is only this Kemal way, there is only you can do that, or only you can use that philosophy. Instead, I keep it small and flexible as possible so that you can build the stacks that you want. And the thing is that I do develop with Rails. It pays my bills, but the thing is that after some time, you got scared of building your own stuff. That's the problem with Rails. You just use Rails, and I saw a lot of junior developers who doesn't even know where to put a plain Ruby class in a Rails application. So that's why don't be scared of building your own stack. And the thing is that these are some stacks that now you can use with Kemal. For example, you can use Kemal for your HTTP framework. You can use CrystalDB for your data layer. It's built in the, no, it's not built in the STD, but it's developed by the Crystal core team, and it specifies a unified DSL for accessing all those DBs like Postgres, MySQL, and SQLite. You can use MySQL, Apache, NPM, whatever. It's just up to you. We don't enforce anything on you. And the thing is that there is no active record. There is something called activerecord.cr, but it's unmaintained and it's not actually active record. And the thing is that you don't need active record at all. The thing is that you can just use SQL. Please use SQL because SQL is great. I love it. But if not, if you don't like it, and if you do really want to use an ORM, then there is this one called Crecto, and this is actually pretty similar to Ecto from Elixir. It uses the repository pattern, and it's pretty flexible. I like it. You can use multiple databases with it. And with Crecto, you can use Postgres, Nginx, and you can put Yarn in front for building your assets or JavaScript. So that's some stacks that you can use and go to production right now. Deployment, like I said, it's a single binary, but the thing is that Crystal requires some dynamic libraries to be installed on the target machine. For example, you need libc, and you need a C compiler, you need lib event, and that's why cross compilation, you can do that, but for now, Crystal does that for bootstrapping the compiler in a new target. Instead, it's better to have Crystal installed in the target machine. And for Kemal, I wrote a Capistrano plugin, Capistrano 3 plugin, so that you can just use cap production or cap environment deploy. And it's pretty fast because it's just a binary. And when you have Crystal installed, that's it. You don't have to change anything at all. And the good thing is that Kemal is actually battle tested on a really, really heavyweight payment gateway. And I'm going to showcase that because I think it's really important. And the thing is that I'm not sure if you have read this blog post from Fabio Akita. He written that Rails is the elephant. And I really agree with that. Rails is like the elephant in the room. Everyone uses it, but everyone hates it. And the thing is that there is no competition. There are some, but no one ever actually used those. And the thing is that Rails is really, the elephant is that. So I'm going to ask you a question. How many unicorns does it take to carry an elephant? I'd say quite a lot. Like, I don't know, hundreds, thousands. And we all have like more than one unicorns in our production servers. Like this. Too many unicorns standing there. And they're all angry. Because they're always leaking memory and that you always have to restart them. And the thing is that, and which makes me really sad is that this. How many of you have an edge top like this when you open your top screen and see lots of processing staying there and eating all your precious memory? For example, this was from that heavy API, and we had like 150 megabytes per worker, and we had 42 workers per machine, but we had like more than one instances to keep that weight up. So it consumes like 5 gigabytes, which is a lot. And the sad thing is that we kill unicorns. We do even have a gem for that, unicorn worker killer. And the thing is that if you don't use that gem, you need to restart your server by your hand, weekly or daily, depending on your load. And I hate that. And Kemal to the rescue. For that specific API, we converted to Kemal, and that's the result actually. Just one instance here. Actually, this is just one process. And it's not even 25 megabytes, it's like 23 or something. So just 25 megabytes, one process, 25 in total, and the same throughput. So when you compare that, it's like, I don't know, it's insane. You are wasting too many resources with all that leaking and idle unicorns just waiting to get hammered. But when you use Kemal, it's like 200 times less memory. And the funny thing is that it's 200 less memory, and it's much more faster process timing. For example, check this graph. This is actually from that same server. So when we had like 10 requests per second, 10 clients requesting that API, Rails was like 700 or something milliseconds, and Kemal just started at 100. And then when the connection goes up like this, up to 100 per second, Rails was getting really, really, slow, like 1.5 seconds. And Kemal was getting slower, but compared to Rails, it's like not even getting slower at all. So we were processing the same request with 140 milliseconds, which is like 10 times faster while consuming 200 times less memory. And the funny thing is that this service is up more than 1 year. I actually left that company, and I asked them, and they said that it's still up, and they haven't restarted for like 1.5 years. So that's a great thing. It just works, and you don't have to touch it. And the thing is that if most of the people just ask me that, if there is anyone ever actually using Crystal and Kemal at all, and the thing is that it's still not 1.0. It's Crystal is 0.22 right now, which is in beta. But there is this company actually using Kemal for microservices, some of them using for serving their website, some of them using it for APIs. And there's like more than, I don't know, 15 companies actually using it in production. And I hope to see that growing like to hundreds when Crystal 1.0 comes up. I opened up a Patreon to get support from community because developing a web framework is not an easy job. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of thought work and a lot of effort to keep it updated. So I'd really appreciate your contributions to that. And I created Crystal Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter for Crystal. And I've run that for 1 year. And now it's the official Crystal newsletter. The Crystal team now published on that. You can subscribe on the mailing list. We are nearly close to 1K subscribers, and we don't spam. And I wrote this small book for Ruby developers, actually, crystalforrubyists.com. It's free, and it's like 50 pages or something. You can just go to that site and download the PDF, the Kindle version. You can even read it online. I haven't updated it for 1 year, but it's still great to start. And thanks, that's it for now. I have stickers for you, actually.